Let me ask you guys a question. Have you ever been hit by an object flying 55 miles per hour? Yeah, I didn't think so. I have, fun fact, but this is because it's a regular occurrence in softball. Hi, I am Rihanna Del Rosa, and today I'm going to tell you about softball and how it has brought my family together and how we've created culture around it. First, I'm going to talk about my parents and their relationship with softball/baseball. Second, I'm going to talk about my siblings and their participation in the sport. And then third, I'm going to talk about my own experience and how it has bonded my family together. Most, if not all, families have something that bond them together, and my family's just happens to be softball. Both of my parents played softball in high school. They were both pitchers and they were both really good at it, at least from what I've heard. But they met each other and then they decided to settle and start a family. And that's when out popped my sister. Then my dad transitioned from being titled a player to becoming a coach, and he actually coached for 25 years. Now, my sister had a lot of drive and she had a lot of passion and tenacity for softball. She really loved the sport, absolutely adored it, and this is partly because my dad's passion obviously rubbed off on her. She was actually supposed to play in college, but she got an injury and unfortunately had to retire from the sport entirely. She was devastated about this, but then she started living vicariously through the middle child, who I'm going to talk about right now. You see, the middle child also had a lot of drive for the sport, but it was a different kind of drive. Her approach to improving was very different than everyone else's, in that she was very, very hard on herself. She would beat herself up constantly about her performance. She would get her in her own head, and if you don't know, softball is a very mental sport. I would say it's 90% mental. If you get in your own head, everything just starts going wrong. And due to this hot-headedness, she was nicknamed Little Brat. And in softball, you always get a weird nickname one way or another. The oldest was nicknamed Peanut just because she was super short and tiny. And she got the nickname Little Brat. And when I tell you it was Little Brat, everybody knew her as Little Brat. It was on her jerseys, it was on her jackets, it was on her visor. And I even called her Little Brat at a point in time. But I digress. Softball is what brought my family together. My parents are divorced, and softball was the one thing I knew I can count on to bring them both together in a civilized manner and actively support their children. My dad was always the coach of all of his daughter's teams, the oldest, the middle, my teams. And my mom was always in the stands supporting us, and for that I am very thankful. And although I didn't play much in my adolescent years, I grew up on that field, the BC fields. My sisters were part of the Tri-Valley Girls softball program, and I was always at those fields because that's where they would practice. I probably have climbed every tree there at least a dozen times, and I know those fields like the back of my hand. Yeah, like I said, I wasn't very interested in softball when I was younger, but this changed when I got to high school. You see, I really had a burning desire to play a high school sport. You know, those movie tropes where, it's the greatest feeling ever. I wanted to be that. I wanted to actively participate in a team, and I wanted to be part of a family. And so I decided to try out for my high school softball team. Mind you, I had not played since I was like 8 years old, so I was beyond terrible, but I decided to try a shot at it anyway. Miraculously, I made the team. I know, insane, right? But I wasn't the ideal candidate, if that makes sense. There are supposed to be 12 players on each team, But on my JV team, my freshman year, there were 13. I was the odd one out. Everyone knew I was the odd one out. Everyone knew that there were only supposed to be 12 players, but I was the 13th. And I was hazed a little bit my freshman year because of it, because everyone knew I wasn't as good as everyone else. But later, the coaches approached me and told me that the reason they kept me there was because they saw that I had a lot of drive and passion, and they could tell I really wanted to be there and improve. I continued playing, and I played for all 4 years throughout high school, but unfortunately my senior year, our season got canceled due to COVID-19. And although I don't play softball anymore, and no one really in my family plays softball anymore, we still bond over the sport together in the form of Major League Baseball. We really love the Dodgers. My family is huge Dodgers family. Shout out to Cody Bellinger if you're watching this. You should call me. But I digress. Today I told you about softball and how my family has created a culture around it. A lot of you may not see this as a culture, but to me, it is something my family has actively participated in my entire life, and it's something I know very well and I've come to love. So I thank you guys for listening to my speech.